Bow! We're back again for episode 12 of the Chinksey Sports Presents the Premier League show. Yes. Right, this is the last one before the international break. These international breaks are really annoying me. So this is the last international break before early next year, and it's the penultimate one before the Euros start. So it's breaking up the momentum of the season where you feel like you're getting into the thick of things with 3 or 4 games, and there's another international break, and so on and so forth. But enough of that. I'm gonna start running through last week's fixtures and results, last week's results and this week's fixtures. First one last week was at Craven Cottage, a game between Manchester United and Fulham. A game that Manchester United had to win, simply, quite frankly. And you could say that just like last season, they were fortunate to do so. Courtesy of an added time strike from the Portuguese talismanic captain Bruno Fernandes. Fulham must have PTSD by now, as last season a similar thing happened when Alejandro Garnacho notched an injury time winner too. United, though, are remarkably only 9 points off of top spot and only 2 points behind Newcastle in 6th, ahead of their return to Old Trafford later on today to face Luton Town, a game in which they'll be expected to win. So imagine if Manchester United win today and Newcastle lose. They will overtake Newcastle, who are supposedly having a good season, and Man United having a shocking season. They've lost 9 or 15 games, which is absolutely horrible. Next up was Manchester City against Bournemouth, ended 6-1 to the home side. My prediction was 5-0. Jeremy Doku ran riot with a goal and 4 assists. Jack Grealish will have his work cut out to work his way back into form and into the team on City's left wing. I do feel that Doku can play on the right and Foden can play on the right, left and centrally. And Grealish can play on the left and centrally. So potentially there's a system that features all three, but I can't help but feel that with the likes of Rodri, Bernardo Silva, guaranteed starters, that there's only space for 2 of the aforementioned trio. I mentioned last week that City had won 12 consecutive league games against Bournemouth, but hadn't tended to score the 4s and 5s and 6s. I thought that would change in this game, and it did. City managed to get 6 without the likes of the informed front 2, Julian Alvarez and Erling Haaland getting on the score sheet, which is crazy. I could not believe that. But you could say Haaland coming off at half time had a lot to do with that. Next up was at Bramall Lane between Sheffield United and inform Wolves. Ended 2-1 to Sheffield United. The home side finally got the monkey off their back with an 110th minute winner from Oliver Norwood, who scored from the spot. I've seen Sheffield United lose to Spurs, Man United and City to late last gasp goals. So they definitely deserve their own bit of good fortune. In that game against United at Bramall Lane, I actually felt that they did well, especially at the start, and stuck it on United. Yeah, I watched that game and they played really well. Unfortunate to lose that game, although United were good in the second half. They're now on 4 points, and another win could potentially take them out of the drop zone, the bottom 3, with Luton, Burnley and Bournemouth facing Champions League sides Manchester United, Arsenal and Newcastle respectively. Speaking of Newcastle, the next game was the 5:30 kickoff at St James's Park between Newcastle United and Arsenal. It ended 1-0 to the Magpies. They inflicted Arsenal's first league defeat of the season, albeit in contentious circumstances. The game all in all lacked quality, was bitty and physical, and a 0-0 result would have flattered neither. The game lacked any cutting edge and was brought to life after Kai Havertz made a reckless challenge, so bad that it riled the Newcastle players, who along with him were all booked after fracas ensued. So yeah, Newcastle had 3 players booked after that challenge from Havertz, and it kind of like it got the fans really riled up, and it just lit the torch fire for like what was to be an acrimonious kind of affair. A challenge on Jorginho from his native compatriot Bruno Guimaraes was lucky to not have seen red as he appeared to strike the former Chelsea man on the back of his head after a robust challenge. The main incident and talking point of the game came when Anthony Gordon, playing as an auxiliary forward, scored. So he was playing as a false number 9 as Eddie Howe took off Callum Wilson for a tactical reshuffle. And it paid off, you could say. It took VAR a while to assess whether, in the lead up to the goal, the following: the ball was out of play, Joe Linton fouled Gabriel Magalhaes, and if there was an offside. After the game, Mikel Arteta went on a furious tirade over VAR, the overall level of officiating in the Premier League. Also, Arsenal released a statement supporting the Arsenal manager's assertions that more needs to be done with regards to the level of officiating and VAR getting decisions right. Next game was at Goodison Park between informed Everton and Brighton Hove Albion, looking for revenge after they lost 5-2 at home to the Toffees earlier in the year. Everton are on a roll right now, so much so that I thought they'd actually beat Brighton, who only equalised following an 84th minute Ashley Young own goal. They have now opened up a 5-point gap between themselves and the bottom 4 and have a far superior goal difference, which is effectively a point on them. Despite losing to Luton and drawing with Sheffield United earlier on in the season. In addition, they face Fulham at home in the Carabao Cup quarter-finals, which is an opportunity for them to reach the semi-finals. So, despite a bad start to the season, it looks like Sean Dyche has really steadied the ship and is getting Everton. You know what I mean? Everton are improving and they're in a quarter-final. So this could, if he can assure them safety going into their new stadium and then get them into the semis, perhaps, it's a decent job done there. Next up, for 3 points in this fixture. I suspect he probably would. I thought Brentford, who have hit some form again, would edge this, as B's forward Brian Mbeumo surprisingly didn't score in this one, but he's been one of the league's standout players this season. West Ham's Mohamed Kudus continues to impress and got himself on a score sheet, as it looks like he's now settled in the side following his summer move from Ajax. So I noticed, I was wondering how David Moyes would fit Kudus and Bowen in the side, considering they both favour the right wing. But what I've noticed is, of recent, especially against Arsenal, Jared Bowen's actually playing as a false number 9. But then Kudus can play as a false number 9 as well. I feel like Kudus is slightly more versatile. He can play on the right as a false number 9 and centrally behind the main striker, whereas Bowen can play on the right or as a false number 9. So there's options to get both of them in, and then you could put Benrahma on the left, Paqueta. You can put Paqueta as a number 10 and number 8 perhaps on the left as well. So you can kind of shuffle people around to get those 3 players in. So it looks like Kudus is settling in now. He's found himself in the starting lineup. He didn't start off in the team. He was on the bench, but now he's come in and it looks like he's cemented his place in that side. Right, next game was at Turf Moor between Burnley and Crystal Palace. Ended 2-0 to Palace. The fact that Burnley had 17 shots and just under 70% possession and still lost this game, for me, wasn't a surprise. I could have predicted that beforehand. Palace, through Roy Hodgson, are a well-organised unit and set up to counter-attack. Burnley are just trying to play football the right way, but just don't seem to have enough quality players and Premier League experience or expertise for me. It will be interesting to see how they set up against Arsenal later, because I've seen Burnley concede 5 to Spurs, be deemed as one to me. I usually talk about Forest's home record, where they have taken scalps against the likes of Liverpool, Arsenal and they got a draw against Man City, to name but a few, in the last year or so. Even though I thought informed Villa would win, Forest are not a team we want to be going behind to, especially with fans as raucous as theirs. Once they got ahead through a strike from Nigeria's Ola Aina, it meant that they could sit back and soak up Villa's pressure and hit them on a break, which they successfully managed to do. And once Orel Mangala scored the second, the game was effectively over. The next game was between Luton Town and Liverpool. Was a real throwback match to the early 90s. Had an FA Cup third round feel to it at Kenilworth Road, which is situated in the midst of houses. It's crazy because, like, to get into certain stands, you're walking through houses. It's bizarre. It's the most bizarre thing I've seen. When Tahith Chong put Luton 1-0 up, former Man United midfielder that is, with only minutes left of the match, I was thinking to myself, is this the biggest shock in Premier League history? Possibly. Because it would definitely be up there. Luton's small, tight changing room and stadium in the middle of a residential street, coupled with their raucous fans, is definitely a leveller for when top clubs turn up to Kenilworth Road, as Spurs found earlier on in the season. They did win that game though. Chiedozie Albene was a constant menace to both Trent Alexander-Arnold and Ibrahima Konate with his electrifying pace. Liverpool did well to get back into the game with such little time left after a late equaliser from Luis Diaz, who I was pleasantly surprised to see in the squad, let alone pitch, given his personal circumstances. Thankfully, his father has now been released from captivity in Colombia. I feel that sometimes in those circumstances, you need to clear your mind instead of staying at home dwelling on the fact. It can even prove to be a motivator, which I feel was the case here. So it was only befitting that he got the Reds' equaliser and was given a standing ovation from both sets of players and fans. In a weird way, Liverpool will be more pleased with the point, and Luton will probably be disappointed that they couldn't hold out for what would have been a pivotal 3 points. So it ended 1-1. Great result for Luton, because they would have probably bitten your hand off for a point before the game. Everyone was probably expecting Liverpool to hit 4s and 5s against them, but that wasn't to be. And as the match went on, it became a thing where could Luton actually nick this? And it looked like they almost were going to do so. Right. The last game of the weekend, which was on a Monday, Tottenham seemed to be closing out the weekend and starting the weekend quite often, was at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. A memorable game, I would say. It's a game that would live long in both fans' memories for different reasons. Definitely the most intriguing match of the season by far. Tottenham started the match extremely positively and went ahead early through Dejan Kulusevski, the Swedish winger. They had Chelsea rocked and on the ropes. However, the turning point turned out to be when Christian Romero was shown a straight red card and Cole Palmer smashed in the following penalty to level for the Blues. So Chelsea kind of grew into the game and grew in confidence after that red card from Romero. Udogie, or Dugue, who seemed to be riled up for the match, seemed to be fired up, was given his marching orders after 2 yellow cards followed several rash challenges. This meant that Chelsea had 40 or so minutes to break down 9-men Spurs. The crazy thing about this game, though, is the persistence of Spurs' high line and the fact that it took the Blues 20 minutes to score against 9 men. Absurd. Like, Spurs' defence kept pushing up. So, like, when Chelsea were trying to play that through ball, they kept getting called offside. Nicholas Jackson, he was a bit wayward with his finishing. He could have had about 5 or 6s. But yeah, he ended the game with a hat-trick. But the truth is, like I said, he could have ended up with 5. Tottenham now have I can't even speak, bruv. Tottenham now have an availability crisis with the likes of Mickey van der Ven, Romero, Udogie, and James Maddison definite absentees for Wolves, and that's just been confirmed with the match kicked off 3 minutes ago. Bizarrely, Spurs boss Ange Postecoglou remained defiant in his post-match interview as he said, "Even if we went down to 5 men, I'd still give it a go, mate." That's a terrible Aussie accent. Statements like this all sound well and good and will endear to the neutrals and to the press because everyone wants to see attacking, bold and brazen football. But as Marcelo Bielsa found out, it doesn't have long-term benefits, and sooner or later teams will pick you off on the break, just like Chelsea did to win it 4-1 in the end. To be honest though, I feel like if Tottenham did that against the likes of Liverpool and Man City, you're seeing 9s and 10s going, especially with 40 minutes remaining. So 4-1 against 9 men is probably the equivalent of 1-0 against 11, you feel me? But anyway, so that was last weekend's results. So now I'm going to go up to my predictions for this weekend. And we're going to start with the game that's just kicked off 4 minutes ago between Wolves and Spurs. I've gone for a Wolves 2-1 win. I feel like both teams lost their last game on the back of very good runs. Wolves lost to Sheffield United to an injury time penalty. And their coach, Gary O'Neill, was rightfully aggrieved. His team have been on the receiving end of some horrendous decisions this season. On the other hand, Spurs lost heavily to Chelsea after having 2 players sent off. They valiantly yet naively persisted with a high line, although you could argue that it almost paid off, which is true. They have an availability crisis, like I already mentioned, with Richarlison, Van der Ven, Oduji, Romero and James Maddison all out through either injury or suspension, which is a huge chunk of their side out. So it'll be interesting to see how Spurs cope. The likes of Eric Dyer, Ben Davies, Pierre Højbjerg, Emerson Royale have all now come into the side with Rodrigo Bentancur on the bench. But I fancy Wolves to just edge this one. The next game is between Arsenal and Burnley. I was fighting with the possibility of it being 4 or 5-0, but I've settled for 3-0. I think this match should be an interesting one as Arsenal got back to winning ways after an easy win against a hapless Sevilla. Meant that they're just one win away from securing top spot in their Champions League group and qualification as well. An impressive feat considering the likes of Newcastle United and Manchester United are fighting for their survival, rooted at the bottom of their respective groups. I feel that if Burnley try and play football how they've been all season, this will only end up in a comprehensive home win. But you could argue, however, Burnley play, it probably will anyway. So yeah, I'm expecting Arsenal to score a minimum of 3 goals. Could be 4-0, but I've settled for 3-0 win to Arsenal. Similarly, at Old Trafford, between Manchester United and Luton Town, I've gone for 3-0 home win. Despite Man U's poor form, I think they're going to win this one comfortably, especially if they get an early goal. It's an opportunity for Manchester United and Marcus Rashford to make amends after their midweek defeat against FC Copenhagen left their hopes of qualifying from Group A in the Champions League hanging by a thread. They're in a situation where even if they do go to Galatasaray and then beat Bayern Munich at Old Trafford, they may still go out, as Copenhagen just need 2 wins to guarantee qualification. I expect Man United to beat Luton, although I don't think it'll be pretty. Next game is between Crystal Palace and Everton. I've gone 1-1. It's at Selhurst Park, where Palace have actually been struggling this season, struggling for goals as well. Palace did well to get the monkey off their back last week with a hard-fought victory over struggling Burnley at Turf Moor. They've been poor of recent at home, like I just mentioned, but the likes of Jordan Ayew and Jeff Sloop have been good this season. Ayew, for me, has probably been the player of the season so far. He scored a few goals from the right wing in the absence of Michael Olise, so will be chomping at the bit to add to his tally. Everton have been rejuvenated in recent weeks, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin looks like he's finally back to his best after regaining match sharpness and getting the winner against West Ham a fortnight ago. They would have won their fourth game from five with 4 clean sheets had it not been for a late own goal from veteran fullback Ashley Young. I can't help but feel that these two sides will cancel out one another, and both would probably settle for a point going into the last international break of the year. Next game is the 5:30 kickoff between Bournemouth and Newcastle United. I've settled for a 2-0 win, although it wouldn't surprise me if it's 2-1 to Newcastle or like a 3-0. But I've settled for a 2-0 away win. Newcastle have had a mixed few weeks after beating both Arsenal and Manchester United without conceding a goal. Yet they toiled in midweek to a disappointing defeat against Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League, which leaves their hopes of qualifying for the next phase hanging by a thread. On the other hand, Bournemouth are coming off the back of a 6-1 mauling by Manchester City, the table toppers, so I expect nothing other than an away win for the Geordies. Tomorrow's game between Aston Villa and Fulham, I've gone for a 2-1 win for the Villains. This is one of those games that could be a draw, but I've gone for a home win because since losing 4-2 at home to Arsenal in February, Unai Emery's men have won 12 straight matches at Villa Park. That is impressive. I think them and Atletico Madrid are on a 12-match home winning run in Europe. So that's very impressive. Not even Man City have won that many games at home. Yeah. Anyway, so I expect that to continue before that record is really put to the test as they face none other than Man City and then Arsenal, the last team to beat them at Villa Park, in the space of 3 days in early December. Fulham, on the other hand, have had an up and down season and could potentially put up a fight. I just expect Villa to have too much for them. And Villa beat AZ or RZ Alkmaar on Thursday 2-1 in the Europa Conference League. But they're still not even top of their group because I think Legia Warsaw are top of that group. Next game is at the Amex Stadium between Brighton and Sheffield United. I have gone for a 2-0 home win for Brighton, the Seagulls. Although Sheffield United will be buoyed by their first win of the season in dramatic circumstances against Wolves last weekend. They face, I would say, an informed Brighton now in what I feel like they're playing them at the wrong time. I feel like Brighton are coming into form. Ansu Fati's now clicking into gear, coming into his own, getting quite a few goals now. Also got Evan Ferguson, Mitoma, Adingra. They're looking good, Brighton. They went to Ajax, the Amsterdam Arena. Was it the Johan Cruyff Stadium? And they won. And they've only lost one in their last 7. And that was to table toppers Man City. And they've had some tough fixtures in that running. Therefore, I'm expecting Brighton to win this one comfortably. Next game is a tricky one, it's an interesting one for me at Anfield between Liverpool and Brentford. I've gone 2-1. I thought it's going to be a hard-fought victory for Liverpool. Another game that could end level, I don't think it will. Liverpool are finally back at Anfield, a place where they've been exceptionally consistent this season. I think they won every single game there, if I'm not wrong, in all competitions. Liverpool haven't won either of their last 2 games, with a draw against Luton and a defeat to Toulouse in the Europa League on Thursday. That could have been a draw if the last-minute equaliser from Jarell Quansah wasn't chalked off. Their attackers have been misfiring of recent, and I expect Brentford to give them a stern test, but I just feel that with Liverpool's firepower, their attacking prowess, coupled with the fact that Jurgen Klopp and his players will be fuming after Thursday, I feel that Liverpool who have the best win potential. Liverpool have the best win percentage in English football history. I think they won 60% of home games in their 130-year-old history, which is pretty decent. But yeah, I think they're gonna win that one. Next game is the penultimate game of the week at the London Stadium between West Ham United and Nottingham Forest. I've gone 2-2. I think West Ham's players must be jaded by now. They're mid-table in the league, have played 4 times in the Europa League against half-decent opposition. They including, is it Olympiacos they played? Yeah, it was Olympiacos, who they beat 1-0. And they came through a tough assignment against Arsenal in the Carabao Cup a few weeks back. David Moyes doesn't have the biggest of squads, whereas Nottingham Forest have had 7 days' rest and will be looking to add to their impressive win against Aston Villa last weekend. I honestly, to be honest, I wouldn't be all that surprised if Forest actually nicked it, but I'm going for 2-2. Last game of the week and before the international break is the big one between Chelsea and Manchester City. Chelsea have been performing better against the better sides this season, that's for sure, against the likes of Arsenal and Liverpool and Tottenham. But this is Manchester City, who should expect to win regardless of what Chelsea do. Firstly, Man City are back to the top of the league. They've won 5 of the last 6 leagues. And it looks like they're hitting their peak, which is a worrying proposition for the rest of the league. As we all know, they always tend to go on a winning streak of at least 10 games. Secondly, Chelsea have lost 6 straight games in all competitions to Man City. All without scoring. All roads point to an away win. I'll see you after the international break.